or number 2?
Oh, I don't know.
Because he put up a little, house for his kids. He didn't come today, so then he had to.
Good evening, and welcome to this meeting of the Old Kings Highway Committee of the Town of Yarmouth, which is being held in accordance with Chapter 470 of the Acts of 1973 as amended, at 7:16 p.m. on Monday, March 13th, 2023, at the Yarmouth Town Hall Hearing Room, located at 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth. Moreover, pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, considering certain COVID-19 measures, this meeting is being run in hybrid mode. So we have those of you who are physically present, and some will be accessing us through the internet or by phone. 4 new applications for a certificate of appropriateness and 1 tabled application for a certificate of appropriateness will be heard this evening in the order listed on the agenda. Please be reminded that our committee's main purpose is to review items for appropriateness and setting, and it is the responsibility of the applicant to comply with the regulations of other town boards and departments, including building, conservation, engineering, health, zoning, and the sign inspector. You should know that there is a 10 calendar day appeal period starting once a decision is filed with the town clerk. Any person aggrieved by our decision tonight can appeal to the Regional Commission of the Old Kings Highway. Our office administrator, Lisa, will be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this process. Before we begin, I would like to welcome our 2 newly appointed alternates to this committee. They are John Stewart, to my left, and Steve Flack, to my right. Both were unanimously approved by the town's selectmen at their most recent meeting. John is returning to this committee, having previously served on it for many years, and this is Steve's first meeting. Welcome to both of you. We are a 5 voting member committee. Since there are 6 of us at the table, I've decided to ask John and Steve to vote on each application on an alternating basis, beginning with John for the first application, Steve for the second, and so forth. However, both John and Steve will be free to ask questions of the applicants and make comments regarding the applications. So the first item on the agenda tonight is 23-A013 to replace a rear roof with a metal roof at 2 Mill Lane. Andrew Maker is the owner, and Kazalt Roofing, is that correct, how I pronounce that, is the agent? And who do we have to would you step up to the microphone, please, and tell us about your application?
Sure. So a quick point of clarification, because I heard Paula mention that she thought she may know where it is, but that's actually the next street over. The gentleman.
Just would have thought you would have been on Main Street. That's, I just blew right by your house.
No, because the majority of the house actually faces Mill Lane. So,
I would have to agree with that.
yeah. So that's why, when Kazalt categorized it and filed it, they said on the back of the house, because the house faces Mill Lane, so the back of the house is on the side of the pool. And
I looked at that house anyway, even though I wasn't sure it was number 2.
no, yeah, he lives on the corner of Wharf, the guy with the house in the back. Anyway, the rear of the house faces kind of north-northeast, and this portion of the house is compounded by being in the shade of a few other gables. And because of that, it receives almost no sunlight at all. And cedar shingles are not a sustainable solution out there.
Did you just put new shingles on part of that roof recently?
Kazalt did on another gable, yeah. And we were limited at the time by the amount of materials we could get last summer. So those are the portions that we did, and we kind of keep chipping away. But this portion is in need of being replaced. And like I was saying, that it doesn't receive any sunlight ever. So we looked at materials that we could put up there, and metal being a historically appropriate material that's been around in residential applications since before the house was built. We felt like it would be suitable for Outback, and it's really not even visible when you're in the backyard because that portion of the roof it's not completely flat, but it's very flat. It has a very shallow grade to
It
it.
is visible from 6A though, on the sidewalk,
On the sidewalk?
yeah.
Walking, not
See
driving.
it if you're walking, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, so,
How slow were you walking, John?
slow enough to look at your roof.
What else did you see in the house?
No, that's it.
I didn't see anyone at the pool, in the pool today,
No?
no.
So just to be clear, we're not talking about the main house roof, correct? We're not talking about the backside of the principal house that faces 6A?
No,
Okay.
no, correct. So if you look at how the house has evolved, so this would have been probably in the third or fourth iteration of the house, and this portion was originally a porch that was built, as far as we understand, post-Civil War. That's the only time reference we've been given.
The part with the roof you're talking about,
Yeah.
okay,
And then that porch was enclosed
yeah.
in the 1970s, is what we've been told. As far as we can understand, there's not a lot of record of that. So now that portion is enclosed with the house, and that's,
That's why we ended up with a cutout for the window.
I'm
You've got,
confused.
you've got the pan going up to the window.
Correct, yep, so that's that's
Rather
for the upstairs, for the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with this house and the neighborhood. I live on Wharf Lane. And as you know, Mill Lane is a very historically significant street in Yarmouthport. It's designated as a scenic way within the town of Yarmouth. So visibility is definitely a concern. And in general, metal roofs are not considered appropriate for especially such a historically sensitive and scenic house on 6A. So to my way of thinking, the visibility is paramount in assessing this application. And I'd like to know how the other members of the committee feel about that.
Mr. Ricker, I have a question for you. What is the pitch of this porch roof? Because it seems quite low.
Yeah, I couldn't give you an exact
312?
number. Let's put it this way, I can easily walk on it without any trouble. That's how shallow it is.
I pitch on the cutout is like 1 in 12.
Well, the
Not even.
cutout is just shedding water, but I'm talking about the roof itself.
The roof itself,
Yeah. And where would, as one looks at it, there's the gable that comes out. There's the window with the shallow copper pan now. And then as you head northeast, there's the gable with the two windows. It's a little hard to see in this photograph, but that standing seam portion, would there be a little teeny bit of it in front of that gable that has the two windows?
Yeah, so
here?
as you get in front of the gable, it's maybe 18 inches there.
And then it would end at the corner.
Correct.
so it's,
If it's even a 312 pitch, the reason I ask is because, and I think as an architect, anything shorter than a 312 pitch, you effectively cannot use any kind of asphalt shingle, and certainly you can't use a cedar shingle and have it work, particularly one that doesn't get any sun, because you won't even have a warranty on asphalt shingles if they're under a 312 pitch, because they just won't shed the water. So it becomes, now I know they have cedar shingles on there, but if it's less than a 312 pitch, and I think it might very well be there. I had, before moving here, I had a deck house, a modernist house that had a 312 pitch, which is the lowest you could have and have an asphalt shingle roof. But it was steeper than that. And so my first question is, I don't know if, in fairness, that we could even impose you putting an asphalt roof on this, depending on the pitch. That said, You know, the next thing would be a membrane roof, and you're trying to do something which is far more aesthetically pleasing in putting in a standing seam roof. But I've also had experience with standing seam systems that require a pitch of a certain, in order to, and I'm curious, is this, have you, the pitch from the folks that have quoted this to not void your warranty on a standing seam roof?
Well, this is a great question, because Alt and we stood in the backyard for a couple hours looking at this and trying to understand what options there were. And that's exactly what they brought up to me, is that this still would fall within the warranty for
Would.
the roof. And the idea came to me because I looked across the street, and Bob, you're probably familiar with this. There's a rubber roof, which isn't very aesthetically pleasing, and it directly faces 6A.
On Mill, across the street on Mill?
So that precedent, I feel like a standing seam roof would be, it's historically appropriate, right? These were introduced in the United States in the 1820s.
Well, just as I've said this many times, sitting on this side of the table, we are not governed by precedent. So it's interesting what the surrounding areas have in the way of roofs, but it wouldn't mandate us to
Okay.
follow suit.
Okay.
Or, but I'm interested in your feelings that this would be aesthetically more pleasing than the other roof. We're certainly in favor of more pleasing.
Is it noticeable? I think if you're looking in my backyard and you really want to see something, it could be noticeable. But is this something that is going to stand out like a solar panel? Absolutely not.
It's also going to be painted black, correct, or some dark color?
What's black? Why don't I think it's silver?
Application says black.
Silver would be a little too noticeable from the satellites, I think, when they're looking at me.
I'll just finish weighing in and saying that I know it has cedar shingles on it now. I do not think cedar shingles, while I love the look of them, are appropriate for a roof of this pitch. And I think that, do you have problems already?
Well, you can see in the pictures that Kazalt submitted, you can see what those look like.
Yeah. Oh, no, they look terrible. And then in half the day, they don't have any sun.
Do I have problems in the house right now? No, but let's see. Why don't you ask me after the next storm?
Yeah, it's a matter of time.
Tim-
So,
No,
Yeah.
underneath the shingles, if you're gonna put the wood shingles on, you're gonna have a Grace ice and water dam, and then you're gonna have a breather underneath it, so, but nonetheless, they will rot. I've replaced,
yeah.
I have a valley on my house of wood, it's wood that the sun doesn't get to, and I'm doing it for the third time now. It's about every 10 years.
There's another,
But notwithstanding, I'm still using wood, even if it can't be seen.
But while
Because the whole rest of the house is wood.
but while that might be appropriate, the system you're talking about, on very shallow pitches, you
Right.
cannot use them. I mean, unless you want to just be constantly replacing them and have them leak. So whether you use an ice and water shield and a breather system and any of those things, there just is a point at which they cannot be in good practice used and be expected to perform in any
Understood.
way. So that's, to my mind, looking at these photographs, that's what we have here. So, but again, that's my opinion.
and I think that the pitch conversation that you bring up is probably what influenced the decision on the rubber roof across the street that faces 6A, and that it's a very similar pitch to what I'm dealing with.
Well, you have been putting cedar shingles on the rest of your house. I've been watching it. So this isn't that you don't want to pitch money for cedar shingles, right? This is about
It's virtually the same.
a system that will properly function for that location. Am I correct in saying that?
You're absolutely correct. It's not a,
A cost-saving issue.
when we sit in the backyard and look at the roof, because it's so shallow and also because it's obfuscated by a huge wisteria. That's the other thing that you don't see in the winter, is that wisteria, when it's in bloom, you don't see anything. It also makes the shingles degrade quite a bit
Which I'm sure
faster.
you're constantly taming, because it grows 18 inches overnight, and that's not a
You know,
joke.
you know very well. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so that's, that's a piece of it, is that, will it be functional? Absolutely. But for us, as we look at it from the backyard or from the sidewalk,
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from abutters or other interested parties?
I just have one question, the enclosed porch area. What is the exterior surface? It's kind of difficult to see.
yeah, so I believe the run is 18 feet, and I think it's 6 feet from the house down to the ground.
What is the material? It's white in
The pictures were after it had been it had been washed. Those pictures were taken 18 months ago, I think. So that's the only reason that it looks lighter in those pictures, and they've been,
and the material is wood
currently it's cedar.
walls.
The walls are cedar as well, yeah.
Clapboard, or,
There's clapboard in the front on 3 sides, and
I think he's talking about the porch itself.
Yeah, the
Just
porch.
the porch,
The
well, the
porch
porch just below the roof
portion.
you want to
porch
That would be
below
covered
has,
by-
Below you
it's
wanna
like a
replace.
shiplap, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's a wood panel.
Okay.
But there's such little surface area there because of the windows.
And that's what was added in the 70s?
Yeah, as far as I can understand, the windows were put in and whatever encasements they put around those. I don't know what it looked like before that. But when you come into that space, it's brick. So you can still, if you put a little creativity out there, you can imagine what it was as a porch. Now it's part of the living space.
I have a question. Whatever material you're using, is there any material color that's closer to the color of the roof that's there now, rather than black? Like, is there a tan or
Like a tan or a
cedar color?
beige or something. This is aluminum, so they can order whatever colors they want.
Shingle.
You can do green, you can do red. I saw a red one the other day.
Yeah, I mean, if the issue is, well, one of the issues is that it's black.
So you're thinking it should be brown, matte shingle color?
Well, I think it would be less obvious
Yeah, that's
to
true.
somebody viewing it from the street, if we're considering viewing, if it can be seen. It would seem to me to make it more agreeable, it would blend in a little better if it were a different color than black.
We don't have a,
What about the color of say, not green, but that brown that copper gets over time?
Bronze-ish.
Bronze
Yeah, the
color.
bronze.
I think a bronze would have a lot of
It's
sheen
green
to it.
over like,
well, he's
20
not,
years or
he's
something.
suggesting, the application isn't for copper.
exactly,
No,
he's removing
but
copper, isn't
they
he?
do have colors that have that dark bronze quality to it.
Anyway, that's my only consideration.
Would anyone have an electronic, can you see the colors?
And I think our thought process with the black was that as cedar, and you can watch in real time basically, as cedar weathers, right? Black was just the end of the spectrum, right? At the end of time, they're gonna get dark and darker.
So
and
this
darker.
brings us back to the issue of visibility. And exactly how we feel about that. I walked that 6A between Wharf and Mill and beyond when Grill 43 was open. I used to walk to Grill 43 to have dinner. And I have to say, you really don't focus on that side of that house, even walking. So if the applicant doesn't care what color the roof is, and it would make a difference to members of this committee who are concerned about visibility, then I think we can amend the application to change the color of the roof.
Well, also, I can pass this around. There's a color here called aged bronze.
Is that the bottom one?
No, that's this one here. That's weathered steel. You don't want it to look rusty. That's aged bronze.
I love rust.
Thank you.
Rusty.
If it was an HO model railroad, it would be great. My feeling about this is, not that I haven't already spoken, but I think all of the varying roof forms and the kind of organic way in which this house has grown, and the clear way that you're going through it, I think that having on something that's relatively not visible, unvisible, not relatively, and of such a low pitch where, quite frankly, a membrane would do the job just as well. To have an applicant come before us who wants to spend the money on, the reason you don't see standing seam everywhere is because it's so darn expensive. Here, I'll pass this around, there's aged bronze. That this is a person who obviously cares deeply about how their home looks, and I think this is for the problem, which is a roof that's just so darn flat. It's an excellent solution. And I think it will be handsome, quite frankly. The little peak you'll get of this little flat standing seam roof. Again, I think the black, I don't really care for the black color myself. That's just a preference. I also think heat gain wise, not that you get all that much sun, it's always an issue. But the aged bronze, well, will look like a, kind of like a copper that has patinated to a degree. It will dull in time, but it'll never turn green.
Would you like to see the picture?
I think I know which color you're referring to, because they gave
It's
me all
not,
the
there's not a big
swatches.
difference.
I like
Okay.
that one myself, because it's more closer to weather
Which
shades.
one?
That one
Gray.
looks like a
So,
turn
but
finish.
But the flat part that's beneath the window, where the copper pan is now, that's gonna be rubber membrane, and that only comes in black, right?
I don't know if they make
I think
rubber.
that only
I don't
comes
think
in
they
black.
make color
Do you know?
rubber.
She likes the
It
kind
only
of
comes in black.
turn
White, black and white, I think.
Yeah.
So do we feel strongly enough about this, or are we splitting hairs?
I think we're splitting hairs from this.
I kind of feel that way,
I
too.
walked by to look at it today. I live in the neighborhood too, and I walk by there a lot. And I had to go just past the hedge on 6A, next to your neighbor, and peek around the hedge to even view the roof. So it's not something that you can see driving by or even casually
And it's
walking by.
wintertime as well. And if there's a hedge that you can't see through, so.
That's a good point. All right, so are we done, and would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the request.
I would agree.
You're gonna.
Second.
Second, that's what I said.
You're gonna
I'd
change the
second
color,
that.
though.
We're gonna change the color?
Yeah, he's gonna,
Um,
he's gonna
You're
change
gonna
the,
change the
I don't
color.
know, are you gonna consider that, changing
The
the?
missus has to approve.
Yeah, as long as my wife says.
Why, my suggestion,
Why don't we table
my
it?
suggestion is that we leave it up to the applicant. I don't think,
Okay.
my sense of the committee is that
It's not a
we're
big
splitting
enough
hairs
deal.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Now, I think Bob brings up a good point in that, it's so.
I mean, I think almost, black would almost look better, since the flat part, membrane part's gonna be black, and you're gonna introduce yet again a third color.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
All
that's
right,
the
we've
best
had a move
plan.
and a second,
Okay, so, John?
Aye.
aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Aye.
And I.
Thanks.
So,
There-
before you leave, we ask you to sign this statement, which basically says if you're planning any changes, that does not include a color change, to let us know.
Fluorescent orange,
Well,
don't do that.
Trust you on that.
Well, lime green is out as well.
I think you guys know the direction I'm headed.
Do your purple, not so good.
Barney purple.
No tree houses.
Awesome treehouse.
When do you buy the home?
I will have been there 7 years in June. And,
Beautiful house.
It is a beautiful house, and
You-
I
you-
drive home by it every day, and I look at the work being done on the roof.
Did you buy it from Mike Lorenz, Mike and Kitty? Or there's someone in between you guys?
but I spoke with Mike when I bought it, because the owner that I bought it from, I ran into Kitty one day. He was lovely.
Yeah, they did a lot of work. They did a lot of work on the house.
Mike gave me a lot of tips on planning.
What's the oldest portion of it?
The front portion that Bob was referring to, which we believe is 1826.
Was it a business, or was it always a house?
There's a cobbler's shop in the bottom. So if you look at the house today, there's a portico in the back. And that was the entrance to the family lived upstairs on the first and second floor if you're on 6A. But if if you ever see me out there laboring away, stop by my local lot.
Welcome to the
What
neighborhood.
about if I need new soles on my shoes?
Yeah, you're out of luck.
It was worth asking.
Good luck with it. You're done. You're all set.
Thank you.
I just saw the two on the side of my Google Earth, but you had a bunch of work people there today with their trucks or some,
They're just doing it.
and I couldn't see through them, so I just assumed it was two.
It's gone, never ending.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks.
All right.
Good night.
The next item on the agenda is to paint the unit at 923 Route 6A, Unit M, Wickham Gray, and the door Hale Navy, and to replace a sign. And do we have the applicant for this present or the agent? Is anyone online?
I don't see your name up there.
I think there's a possibility that we could vote on this without representation.
I agree.
If we all went by and looked at it. First of all, it would appear that the sign is already present.
Well, there is a sign, but I don't know if she wants to change it.
Looks like the same one to me.
Is it the same
Let me see.
But it's going to look the same as the temporary one that's on there. Okay. So, are there any comments about the application?
I think the colors are quite nice.
Any comments from the public or abutters? Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Steve?
Aye.
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 Too bad they aren't all that easy.
Okay, so. She'll have to sign this later.
Voting on this one.
Oh, the other, you didn't vote.
Okay. So I just got everyone to sign the wrong application,
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
so we have to do that again.
Was that the application for the Super Walmart on 6A?
What did we approve?
You just signed over our bank
In the middle of
accounts.
Yarmouth Port. The 20,
Other way around this.
Oh, my good God.
What?
Oh, because I'm
it's a
looking.
500,000 square foot facility in the middle of Yarmouth Port.
That's fine. This next door to.
Well, we
yeah,
already
I'll be
signed it,
happy with
so.
Convention center?
Wrong one.
At a high-rise
Oh, that's-
casino.
Good. At least I'll have something to do nights.
Maybe this one will get approved
Yeah, there you
unanimously,
go.
too.
That's what I'm saying.
All right,
Cha-
okay.
Change the check mark.
All right.
Yeah, you can avoid that.
I have done this before. Believe it or not. Okay, so. The next application,
So do we have to sign that one?
I'm hoping that it'll be unanimously approved and that we won't, that we can just use the one we did before. Okay. All right. This is 23-A018, to construct a fence at 70 Great Western Road. Starbrook Construction Services is the owner, and All Cape Fence is the contractor, or supplier, as the case may be. And who do we have tonight?
My name is Lisa Cathcart. I'm the one who put in the application. Are there parentheses on the application?
Could you please?
Yes, she's from Starbucks.
All right. And tell us your name again?
Lisa Cathcart. Lisa
Okay.
Cathcart.
All right. And present your application for us.
Okay, we want to put up a fence. It's a new constructed house, and I believe they had come before you in May of last year or March of last year. And would like to put a fence around just the back part of the property. We have a dog, so we just, like I said, everywhere we've been, he's used to a fence, so we need a fence for our dog. We just want it around the back of the house. We're gonna keep the whole front open and minimally landscaped. I like heather and hydrangeas and Cape Coddy type things. I don't want a big lawn. It's way off the street, but we definitely want the backyard fence. So we've dealt with All Cape Fence before. They put a house, that same fence at our Dennisport property. We love the fence. We get many compliments on that fence, actually.
Beautiful fence.
So do you live there, or you I'm a little confused.
This house is not done. It won't,
So is it a spec house, or is it going to be your house?
it's a spec, well, it's gonna be our house. We'll close in May. But that's why we need a letter from them in order to apply, because we won't own it until May.
I see. Got it.
No, we live in Dennisport at the moment.
I am going to ask you a question that really is for my own interest, because I'm curious, because it's the fence we're looking at. About how much is that fence a linear foot installed, if you don't mind my asking?
No, I mean, the total was a little over 15, so it's 218. You're not gonna make me do math, are you?
No. 18 feet?
Yep, it's 218 feet.
It's
It's a little over 15.
a very nice fence.
Any
I'm not sure
questions
if he
from?
gave us a great deal
About
because
$69 a linear foot, by the way.
we're a
Questions or
repeat
comments from the
customer,
committee?
so I don't know if that's a deal, so,
That's
but
good to know.
What did you say? I'm sorry, say that
we're
again.
a repeat customer because he put that same fence up at our Dennisport.
It's a nice fence.
It's a beautiful fence.
I don't have any problem with
No.
I have no further
Absolutely not
questions.
visible from
Any
the road.
questions from the public or
I'm just
abutters?
curious how far the fence corner is to the lot line? Doesn't seem to be on the schematic here.
There was, was our drawing, and then this was his drawing. I'm not really sure, from that part of the, it's over more, so, I mean, it's probably 6 or 7, maybe 10 feet from just my recollection from.
But it could be on the lot line.
Can be on the lot line, yeah.
I'm just saying, because the angle is 36, and then, but we're kind of going over and straight, so, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that where we staked it off and measured it was at the lot line, but it could be very close.
I think it's a nice fence, and it's set way back from the road, and I don't see any, unless I hear any arguments, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, starting with John?
Aye.
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 Aye. Good.
I'm
We
good.
can use
Have a
the
fence?
other form.
Thank you very much.
Come up here and sign your life away.
Your
Sure he did,
firstborn.
actually.
All we have to do is here. Thank you. Good luck with it.
Thank you. Good luck.
Have a good night.
What kind of dogs do you have?
A black lab.
They're the best. They're going to hate being so close to the beach. Good night.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is 23-A019. Construct an addition on the west side and the rear of a house on 19 Essex Way. Mark and Karen Gronberg are the owners, and Brian Basler is the agent.
Thank you.
Good evening.
And you are the Gronbergs, I presume.
We are.
Like to tell us about this application?
The application is to enlarge our sunroom, and to enlarge our bedroom to make a more handicap accessible bathroom and living space. Right now, our living room is 3 steps in, 3 steps up. Eventually, that will not work.
I'm curious, the last little piece that has the door on the back, the last of the little bump outs, what is that little section?
That, which will be coming off, was a walkout bulkhead that we applied for back in 2015 with you guys. Yeah, we're redoing, I know.
Thought it was a mudroom. It looked like.
No,
No, okay, so it's a
which
bulkhead.
picture are you on?
That's under, I think it's the new part.
That will now be the walkout bulkhead on the new,
Oh, so you go in there and that's a stair down.
down to the cellar, yes.
Understood.
That was a,
Which is why it's so narrow. It needn't be any bigger than that. Gotcha.
that's a great solution.
It
for a
is.
bulkhead.
I have to say,
I like safety and
the way you've
bulkheads. To
broken
me,
up, the-
those doors are not,
Right.
it's appreciated how you've broken down the massing. A lot of people, their first instinct is to simply extrude the house a little more.
Right.
And by pulling it back a few feet and lowering the roof of it, you break the massing down, which is always a good thing, and I want to praise you for that.
you can take Jim Basler for that. He's an architect, I guess, in town. Brian's the great.
So your house is hardly visible from Essex, which is,
You can't
in a
really.
way, kind of a shame, because it has,
see it at all. Nobody gets to enjoy our little piece of paradise but us.
yeah. As I was,
This was
the
going,
reason I think it's kind of a shame is that it has such nice curb appeal.
over here is going.
It does.
So,
So
and
she's
you have a
adding
good
on here, and she's
contractor
adding
working on
here, or
this
is
for
she
you.
just leaving this?
You're right.
Known Brian for a
Yep.
long time.
So it's
They originally built the house.
Oh, okay.
Basler's originally built the house.
All right.
that, and then there's this here. There's a little piece here that they're nixing and doing that, and then there's a little piece here that they're nixing and doing that, and then the little piece for their stair. So
Okay.
what's theirs going away with something larger, and what's theirs going away with something a little larger, but effectively, it's a very similar footprint.
Right, okay, okay. It's hard to tell from just these.
Yeah, it is hard, it can be hard. Pardon me.
All right.
You're adding on a good deal of square footage, but you've respected the scale and massing of the house, which is a nice thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is more than 500 square feet.
Oh, wait, look, here, I had one.
Folding a map back up. That's always tough.
Usually a promising sign. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Looks good to me.
Any questions or comments from the public or abutters or any other interested party? Do I hear a motion?
Allow me, I move to approve this well-thought-out application.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll take the vote, starting with John.
Nope,
It's Rick.
Steve's turn.
It's Steve's time?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. Thanks for paying attention, John.
Good luck.
So you've been approved.
Since we moved down here full-time, we've had quite the system. We moved back in October 20th.
It's important to be able to use your home
Yes,
that you love.
yes.
So you need to come up and sign this document,
bring-
which simply says if you're going to make any changes, to please let
I
us
can bring
know.
it to you. Let me bring it to you.
He'll bring it to us, honey.
Okay. That's very kind of you, Rick.
Thank you. Right up there, honey.
Lot of pork chops.
So could I. Thank you.
Which one did they sign?
Uh-oh.
Wait,
Wrong one?
This one.
Oh, dear Lord.
This is my night, I guess. Okay.
that was a practice.
This is the loan for the new car you're buying.
Okay. What flavor would you like?
Oh, we have fun here.
We gave you the wrong. It's a Maserati.
Oh, good choice, though.
I'll take you for a ride.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Good luck with your project.
Where's
Thank you.
Where's Richard when we
This way,
need him?
honey, I gotta get it.
Tell me.
I guess we haven't changed the daylight savings time.
We're changing that on the way out.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Well, so whoever's tall enough to reach it,
What's that?
the clock.
Oh, okay, we'll do that.
Oh, sir.
All right.
Did we all sign that? Mr. Chairman?
I think we haven't,
We go this way, I guess. It doesn't matter.
Is Steve signing this one?
Yes. Good night to you both.
Good night.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
He didn't sign it.
oh,
Next one, you will.
I'm so confused.
Real bunch of rocket scientists here tonight.
Oh, my.
Okay. Last but not least. So the tabled application is 23-A010 to install 33 solar panels. On the application, it says on the rear and side roofs at 12 Stratford Lane. Thomas Lundquist, Life Estate EST is the owner, and Clean Energy Design is the agent. And first, we have to untable this application. Do I hear a motion for that?
Move to untable application
Second it.
23-A010.
Okay. All in favor? I guess we'll leave out the alternates for
Aye.
this.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So, we have two letters in support of this application, which I will read for the record. First one dated February 27th of this year to Mr. Robert Wilkins, Chair and members of the Old Kings Highway District Committee, from Donald and Tammy Blackwell. Subject, Tom and Christine Lindquist's application for a solar project at their home. Tom and Christine are neighbors of ours. They live one street up from us. We are on Avon Road. They are on Stratford Lane. We have had our solar system since 2013. It was a project completed by Clean Energy Design, LLC. Clean Energy Design is committed to environmental sustainability. It is a company that strives to use American-made modules whenever possible. We are excited that another family in our area is interested in helping to provide a cleaner and greener environment for Yarmouth Port. Tammy and I are 100% in support of Tom and Christine's request. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. Sincerely, Donald R. Blackwell. And the second letter comes in the form of an email. And it was sent by David Lahan, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Old Kings Highway. My name is David Lahan. My wife Marilyn, or Marin, and I are the homeowners at 20 Stratford Lane in Yarmouth Port. My neighbor, Tom Lundquist, at 12 Stratford Lane, has reached out to me about the possibility of installing solar panels on his home roof. I have discussed this with my wife, and we both fully support and approve, in bold type. The installation of Tom's solar project, if there is any further information you need, feel free to email me back. Thank you and best, David Lahan. So, tell us about what's different from this version than the one we tabled.
We had a little sketch from you, Richard. And took that under close advisement and placed the panels almost exactly where you had drawn a sketch them in.
And your calculations, did you lose any performance with that?
It was incrementally the same.
Ah.
It was because because his home happens to have that sort of southeast and southwest facing. Both those roof surfaces, the perpendiculars are southeast and southwest, as opposed to some homes are, more east-west. And anyway, it makes, except for the trees that were in the back of his home, and he's cleared some of those back, there was no difference in the amount of irradiation there to speak of.
And if I could, thank you, if I could say, Mrs. Ecker, the chairman, and I were the only ones here when this application was here last time, and there were
No, I
five.
was here for this.
You were here for this
Yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, you were, I forgot, I'm sorry. Anyway, for our two alternates, that there were those 5 panels that are now in the back side, kind of on either, around the.
Still on the front.
Well, they were below, they were here. Those were,
He's now going here?
no. These,
I remember you
there were
discussing this.
5 panels here on the very front that kind of covered over
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much whole roof. Those moved back
Over
here.
there.
So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and there's a skylight. Those weren't there. There were these panels and these, and then those 5 panels were horizontally along the front here.
So these are still there.
Those are still there, but these 5 panels moved back
Okay.
here. But now we will see some of that beautiful new roof that Mr. Lundquist put in here on the front edge, leading edge, well, just maybe a third of the roof. So they moved them from here to here. And that was the sketch that we discussed, and that was the sketch that I provided to them.
Just for clarification purposes, so the application as presented to us does not mention solar panels on the front of the house. That's wrong, correct? They will be on the front of the house.
Yeah, I don't know why that was stating
Yeah,
that, 'cause I don't.
That's what I was looking at, and
Right.
doesn't say that, so I thought you moved them to the back.
I'm afraid there's a little error there, because I don't think, that language wasn't supposed to have changed. Because essentially, they're in the same.
Just as long as we understand you, I think, call it a clerical mistake or whatever. It doesn't really, just wanted to be sure we were all on the same page, and I think we are now. So, do we have any questions or comments from the committee about this?
So am I recollecting from the first time you came before us that this home is sort of elevated? And the roof is relatively shallow, so it's not as visible from the road,
The shallow pitch.
like a
yep.
7 pitch or something?
Maybe less than that.
I think it's like a 5.
Yeah, I think that upper
Okay.
section, yep.
So I was personally gratified to see the second letter, because the first one was from the only other resident in the immediate vicinity that I could detect driving around that has solar panels, so obviously they would like company.
There's 3 or 4
And
houses
there are
in
some differences between the solar panel, the application of the panels between the two houses. For one thing, the house on Avon has a very shallow pitch, shallower than your house. Also, it's a dark roof, and your roof is a light roof, which gives me a little pause. It's a beautiful roof, but the panels will necessarily stand out in contrast because of the difference in color. Also, the house on Avon has made an effort, it's not totally successful, to block the view from Avon of the roof with trees. Not sure, I don't remember how long that application came before this committee or how.
10 years.
10 years. Trees have grown up a lot. And as I wasn't on this committee 10 years ago, but my guess is they may have been required at the time of the, I don't know. So that's all I have to say with regard to the application. I certainly appreciate the fact that you were and are willing to work with us on it. And we are, as a committee, I think I can speak for all of us, sensitive to the environmental considerations here and energy efficiency. I'm looking forward to the day when we have affordable solar shingles that will mimic actual shingles, and we will have no issues with solar panel applications going forward. But I don't know when that will
I
be.
think Elon Musk will make it to the Mars before that happens.
No. I understand your pessimism. Okay.
I've actually done building integrated solar going back 15 more years, and it took me 2 years. I was at the University of Rhode Island, where they were trying to demonstrate building integrated, and they were choosing a product that I knew was going to be a complete failure. And sure enough, a few years later it was. Luckily, I convinced them after 2 years to go forward with a sun slate, which mimics a slate, you know. And it does okay, and they're still around, but they're really expensive. Very impractical in that regard. But as an architectural feature, if it was something that had a slate roof, it might work.
All right. Any comments or questions from the committee?
There are, I think there's 3 or 4 houses actually with panels facing the front of the street in that neighborhood. But I remember discussing this in the past, someone had put in a panel without a permit on one house. We couldn't find it going back in the records. Now, I don't remember which house that was, but it didn't come before us. Anyway, I think it was, they may have come in later. But what we decided was, at the time, was that neighborhood, you're not passing through it. It's a really nice neighborhood. Really well-kept homes. But we were allowing them to go on the front in there under, I guess we were calling it kind of a solar neighborhood idea.
Well, that's what we're doing, is solar exemptions now for
Yeah,
neighborhoods.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that up, Paula. I don't know if you're aware, but in our efforts to move with the times, and be more lenient about solar panel applications, last year we adopted as a commission, which is a group of myself and the chairpersons for the other towns, an exemption for rooftop solar panel arrays. And with your indulgence, I'll read what's relevant here. Roof length equal to or less than 50 feet. Roof height equal to or less than 35 feet. Roof pitch equal to or less than a 7/12 pitch. Roof shingles shall be of a dark color to blend with the solar panel array. That's the one red flag. Solar panel array shall have a contiguous rectangular pattern and shall not be broken up with visual gaps or disjointed sections, and you worked on that for us. Solar panel thickness shall not exceed 2 inches. Solar panel height above roof shall be less than 6 inches. No change to the appearance of the building except for the addition of the panels. So, you got all of them checked, except for that one. And I'll ask if there are any other comments before I'll entertain a motion. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve this revised application.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. John Stewart.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. And John, you get the first vote?
I did.
You seconded it? Okay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing the letters, too.
Yes. And if you would,
There was one other that was supposed to land. I don't know where it got to. There was another neighbor right next. Across the street. Yeah.
okay, I'll take your word for that. If you'll sign this, which says if you're going to change anything, which I don't think you are.
Well, in hindsight, I actually, in operating with you guys, I almost should have sort of steered the thing around and said, well, what if we accept your suggestion? And then if we made little changes, which we did turn one panel, I think, since then, but, you know, we could have just wrapped it up
No,
a month ago.
hasn't come
Well,
yet.
you can do.
Hindsight is
Thank you, Mr.
20/20.
Lundquist. I knew you were disappointed that day, but we got where we wanted to be.
I hope you agree we got a better result. Good. That's what we want.
And after all, again, that roof you have is so handsome. I mean, few people choose that color shingle. And I'm sure for you, doing this was somewhat, no, and so I'm sure even this, as much as you want this, I'm sure there's also, for you, it's like, oh, well, I'm gonna lose that beautiful roof in this. So anyway, good luck with it.
When they come out with brown panels,
if-
we'll retrofit it.
Before, okay,
Spray paint 'em.
Krylon.
Good night.
good night.
Thank you.
What do you think those are, Steve?
Well run. Humor too, that's good.
Didn't have humor, we cry. It's like 7:15.
You wish.
I'm excited to have it stay dark later. Oh, my God.
Okay, we need to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion regarding the minutes?
So you got the suggested edits. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the, February
27.
27th meeting as corrected.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Because you weren't here, just the three of us.
I wasn't here.
You weren't here
Okay,
either,
so
Paul.
you can abstain. All right, or Steve, you can abstain. I'm not sure who's up next. I think it's Steve. So we were going to discuss Old Kings Highway, the violations process. And I think that, who was the impetus for that?
Moi.
Okay, so would you like to start this discussion?
Sure. So when I'm driving around looking at homes, or when I'm just driving around in general, and I notice things, and I go, that doesn't look like something we would have approved, I will make a note of it, send it to Lisa, and now that Lisa's taught me how to look up on the town website all of the online things that have been approved, I have gone in and looked to see if said homeowner had applied for an Old Kings Highway application and/or a building permit or what. And there have been occasions when I've found someone who has gotten a building permit with no Old Kings Highway application. So I'm not quite sure how that process works, why the building department doesn't come to us if they don't see one.
A building permit was issued?
And in fact, like, the house nearly across the street from yours, John,
Yeah,
approaching Winter Street, one of the small little capes that, it was Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, 2021 or 2022. It was at 4 o'clock, they came in with a chainsaw and cut out the windows and put in new replacement windows, no application to Old Kings Highway, but they did get a building permit. So,
they had a building permit?
so I'm not quite sure how,
Well, there's
I
an
don't know.
emergency building permit.
What's-
but
sorry?
that's usually for a leaking roof. An emergency permit?
I don't think so.
No, not.
So
for-
it appears that there are times when people don't know the process and just apply for a permit with the building department, and why the building department doesn't check to see if they've gotten an Old Kings Highway permission first, I don't know. But there have been some of those instances. There've been other instances where things have been put up with no application to Old Kings Highway and also no building permit.
Oh, yeah, well, I can tell you half a dozen. and,
Right, but,
within-
so there's a variety of violations, if you will.
Yeah,
So for me, I feel like if we have rules, there's got to be some sort of enforcement with teeth, or no one's going to bother to abide by them.
right. So that's the job of the building department. We don't have, we can ask the building department to violate them. And I think it's up to the chairman to, after 30 days, if am I right about that?
I don't know.
Then you can start fining. And it can be up to, well, I think it's like, it can be up to $500 a day.
But isn't that the fining under the purview of the building inspector, not us?
Yes.
And from what I understand from the selectmen, one of the selectmen, is that they have not been doing that in the past because they've been short-staffed and haven't had the manpower to do so.
They are. We put a new electrical panel in, and that day, the electrical inspector was doing 19 inspections. And I have a friend who's an electrician, and some of those are new houses, and he says a real inspection will take 2 hours. Now, I'm not disrespecting the building department, but they're overworked and understaffed. So at one point, they did say, they suggested that we needed to do a better job, but I don't know how we can without their assistance.
And there's other examples of, like the house in the corner of Vesper that wanted to put in a pool and wanted to put in a pool fence, and then was told the pool fence had,
Exactly.
they had to have
Whatever
plantings
happened to that?
outside. Well, they put in plantings inside the pool fence when they were supposed to be outside, and they put a little corner fence that was supposed to be wooden, and it was plastic. And
They
they
were violated.
were
so what
violators,
happened to
they
it?
were never fined,
Well.
or
then-
never told that they were in the wrong. I don't think.
Yes,
Oh, they're aware of it.
did this committee, say for that, the Vesper one you're speaking of, did this committee write a letter or a directive or a request to the building department did we formally violate them, as it were? That's probably the wrong way to put it. Did we formally put a notice of violation? Let me rephrase that. Did we formally write a letter to the building official saying applicant X is in violation for these reasons, please, blah, blah, blah?
So I wasn't on the committee then, but I guess the question is, what is the process, and does the process need to be?
I think what the vice chairman just said, that should be the process.
But who does that?
Well,
And who's policing it? That's the major issue, I
the building
think.
department.
It's
the
supposed
building
to.
department
They're not
is the
policing it.
enforcement agent by law.
Should the committee be calling the violator in prior to issuing the violation? I'm just asking, I don't know.
So in the
Should-
past,
Let's say we find out
Right.
that Mr. Smith has violated something.
Right.
We've driven by, we've seen it.
Okay.
We've done our research. They didn't apply for a permit. They simply did it. Or they got a permit, they didn't. Let's say they didn't apply for, they did it without. Should the process be, and I don't know what it should be, should they be called in here to account for it before the committee? And if they ignore it or
Oh, I
don't
see,
come in,
yeah.
we then issue a violation? Or do we just move directly to issuing a
In the
violation?
past, we sent them a letter, saying that they are in violation, could they please address the situation before us, right? If they ignore that, after a certain period of time, then it's up to the building department to
Do we
decide.
notify the building department
Yes,
that they have to
the
do
building
something?
department should get a copy of the letter as well as the homeowner.
Should we, if we don't do it, or if we hadn't done it already, should we go a further step of we notify the owner of their in violation, please come explain yourself?
Why don't
They
I?
don't.
I have a suggestion. Why don't I sit down with Lisa at our mutual convenience and find out exactly what forms we currently have, and what the process is with respect to those forms. And then I think, and I'd brought this up before, I believe, that it would be a good idea for the vice chairman and me to sit down with the building department and talk about this and see if we can come to some kind of mechanism
That's a
via
good word.
which we can put some teeth in this and get people who don't wish to comply to feel the pressure. It's a difficult thing. Most people that we deal with are cooperative. In most instances, I think we benefit them with our suggestions, but you run across certain people who are of a mind that this is my property, I can do what I want with my property.
Perfect
So-
example, I think, is the Pine Street. If you're coming down White Rock and turn right on Pine, there's a house there, the second one in, that put up that white plastic fence.
Yellow. It's yellow. If it's the one I'm thinking
Pine
of.
Street?
Is it on Pine? Oh, no, I'm thinking,
You're thinking of
White
going-
Rock
I'm
Road.
thinking White Rock.
Anyway, you
actually
go
like
around
that
the
house.
corner on Pine, and there's like a boxed fence, white plastic, and a block down is a, kind of a duck pond, I think, is a person who had a white plastic fence in and had to take it down and put wooden, and then a block up from them is a person who put in twice the length, and it's plastic.
Well, there's always room for improvement, and there's always going to be things that slip through the cracks, and we would like to minimize those things that slip through the
I don't even think
cracks.
we notified him, or that person that owns that house.
Yeah.
So that raises a question. Is there a scale of violations that this committee felt were more serious? I mean, something you've described, that's pretty serious. You have somebody
I think
next to you who's
this
getting
is
away with
just,
this?
I would surmise that in recent history, a lot of this has to do with COVID. That a lot of things fell through the cracks during COVID, and
Well, I would admit
People who
that
wanted-
that fence went up during COVID. It did.
Well, there've also been, in the past year, since I've been on the committee, or as an alternate, there have been a number of things we've noticed and reported them to the chair and Lisa sent a letter to the owners, and there have been often times where the owners weren't aware that they had to submit an application, and they've turned right
later in the
around and
story.
submitted it, and it got approved
Right.
after the fact.
That is.
So, yeah, that comes around to education. Of people who, 73% of the homes in 02675 have been paid for with cash by, and a large portion of those people are from out of state, and some of the houses haven't even been physically seen by the
So what- in
buyers,
what years-
according
in
to
what ti-
real
what-
estate people I speak with
What year span?
last year. So, they're not aware, they're not made aware that they're in the historic district even.
But are these people then, are they being granted a permit, or are they doing work without a building permit?
Both.
I mean, do you need a building permit to put up a fence?
Yes.
Yes. So Lisa,
Unless it's lower than, 3 feet? Unless it's 3 feet or lower.
30 inches or something.
What's the difference between a building permit and Old Kings Highway approval? 4 feet.
someone goes to the building official to pull a permit for an addition that they have drawings for, and they didn't know they were in the district. Do they always kick it to you? So they never grant them a permit they'll say, sorry, you have to go around the corner? Okay.
And I think a lot of them go home and just do what they plan to do.
Well, then they don't pull a
without any
permit.
permit.
Yeah. Which I'm sure the building official isn't happy about.
The other concern I have, which is tangentially related to this, is this whole issue of like for like, and what actually constitutes like for like. And this is where education comes into play. For example, if we're talking about antique windows on a house on 6A that have been there for 200 years, and they want to replace them with Anderson 400 series or what have you, with of the same size, with exterior muntins, lights the same height, that's not like for like.
Correct.
And I'm not convinced that we've had a discussion with the building department. I mean, let me rephrase that. I think we should have a discussion about this with the building department, so that they understand what our role is and how it benefits the historic district, and specifically with regard to that issue, what is and what is not like for like. So I don't know if we're going to solve this issue of the violations tonight,
Good start.
but it's certainly something we should stay on top of, and
May I suggest that we keep this item on the agenda?
Yes.
That we can choose or not to discuss it. And the other thing I would like to add to the agenda, which goes directly to Mr. Chairman, to your mentioning the windows, is, what is good preservation practice? Admittedly, the vast majority of the houses that are under our purview and within the district are not truly historic houses. They have a sense of character. There is this sense of completeness of the area. There's this feel that is Cape Cod that we want to preserve and make sure that doesn't get diluted and become generic suburbia. But most houses are not dealing with historic windows. Most houses are dealing with, maybe 30, 40-year-old windows, 50-year-old windows. But when it comes to historic fabric of homes that are truly historic, those things should be retained and preserved. And I would like to discuss, we don't have to do it tonight, obviously, but what that is. And I think in terms of also educating the public, we could have performed that service of bringing to them, an understanding. And as you've said before, and in meetings I've watched before I was on this committee, you have a window built in 1850 or 1780. It is made of material, if they're in good condition, that you simply cannot find today in terms of the density of the wood, in terms of the long-lastingness of the wood. And there are ways to mitigate the fact that a single piece of single glazing is cold. You can have an interior panel. You can have an exterior, storm window, which, although they're not ideal and they're not terribly pretty, every historic district in this country usually gives you a blank check if you want to put on exterior storm windows, because they are A, reversible, and B, protect the original window. But if you don't want that ugliness, have an interior storm panel, and restore your window. And as you've also spoke, Mr. Chairman, this preserves the value of your home. And I think that part of what we should do is, rather than simply being reactive, is try to help people understand so that they will learn the value of what they have and why it's worth keeping.
And we have done that on a one-on-one basis when applications have come before us to replace their antique windows with modern windows. We've actually gone on site visits to assess the condition of the original windows, often original, and very frequently we find that they are in very good condition, with a minor refurbishment necessary, far less costly than replacing the windows, and whatever restoration is necessary would be far preferable from a resale perspective, from a historic perspective. So we've done that on a one-on-one basis. Should we do something more proactive, as you say? I think it's worthy of consideration. Exactly what form it would take, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something to be discussed, evaluated, and possibly implemented. I do want to say one word of caution about this word historic, because this has sort of been a pet peeve of mine. Historic is not synonymous with antique. In other words, a house that was built in 1940 is historic. It may not, by the definition of 100 years old or older, be antique, but it's nevertheless historic. So
Oh, and I agree.
we
just so you
need to
know.
be careful about not limiting ourselves to antique houses.
No, I just so I think of historic as anything over 50 years old.
Right.
So to me, anything over 50 years old is a historic house.
And I regret the fact that with our exemption covers houses that are less than 75 years of age. I would have preferred to have seen less than 50 years of age, but
I
that's
can't believe
water
we're
under the
saying it,
bridge.
but the reality is, modernist houses are now historic. You know, and we call it the recent past, and in preservation, and homes that you never would have thought are now, you know, a house built in 1970 is really a historic house.
They're gonna be more historic.
Correct.
So,
All right.
So I agree with you completely.
I don't know how much more we want to delve into this tonight, but I do have one, so I guess I'm going to say
Can I
we're.
just say one quick, my only comment on this subject, because I haven't said anything, is that it would be really nice if this committee worked more closely with the building department, and I don't know how we get there.
Well, I think a meeting would be a good start. Okay, so I have one last piece of business to discuss, and that is that the Regional Commission met last week. It was principally an information sharing meeting where we talked about our procedures and our forms that we use, all the forms that we dealt with tonight and some that Lisa deals with as part of her practice in concert with her job. And the most interesting thing that came out of it, from my perspective, was the town of Dennis has no paper forms. It's all done online. And there was a lot of discussion about that. And one of the things I pointed out was, you know, being able to hold these Basler drawings tonight and
Right.
see actually something
I agree with
closer
that.
to scale.
I agree.
I don't know how they do that without paper, but they do. So I don't know if that's the wave of the future.
Are they bringing an iPad or a laptop with them to the?
Good question. I've never watched any of their meetings, and that question wasn't asked.
In your car, when you go out to look at them too, because you have nothing to refer to.
Yeah, I mean, I have a 27-inch 4K screen at home on my computer, but I can't see the detail that we can see in a set of plans.
I actually think the application could be improved upon in terms of the amount of detail we require, depending on what the applicant is asking. But I agree with Mr. Chairman, I want a set of drawings to scale and to
Right.
quarter-inch scale. So, you know, in other places in Rhode Island where I was, they would be, depending on what it is you're wanting to do, you know, elevations must be, you know, to a quarter-inch equals a foot. If there's a detail, I know we typically don't get into that, but if it's a detail, it has to be whatever, and a half an inch equals so that without, I agree, until, maybe it's a function of our age, but until, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can write a letter in Word and review it and review it and review it and review it. But until I print it and have that copy in front of me, I miss the error. And when you deal with a drawing and you're dealing with something that you need to see it to scale, and a 1/4-inch scale has to be printed, and there's no way around it. And that's how I feel.
All right.
Well, the other thing with that is, with the Brian Basler drawings from tonight, I had a hard time looking at the proposed addition, comparing it to the photograph. I would like to see
That's
the
exactly what I said.
existing floor plan and existing elevations, and the proposed floor plan and proposed elevations.
If I could, I do agree with you, and that's something that I think should be like amended on our application. I believe they should be, and on the same drawing, this is again what I would do. Existing, bottom drawing, proposed, top drawing, same view.
Piece of paper.
And I do believe, though we don't comment on plan, I believe it is important to know what the plan is. And because it informs you on why the elevations are what they are. And while you can read between the lines on many things, in fact, the house we just approved, they had those windows on the corner, which were actually very modernist. You know, that's about a bed, right? That's about a bed fitting between the windows. And we're dealing with a gentleman there who clearly has accessibility issues. That might require a little enlarged bedroom more than you might otherwise think, or a bathroom that's bigger to accommodate a wheelchair. So to have that information would be very helpful in us making a decision, not nosing in on there. But, you know, obviously you need a little more room to get around a bed if you're in a wheelchair. And that requires a certain amount of accommodation on our part in reviewing it. So I do think we should require, this is where I do think we should amend our application, so that the drawings have to show existing and new, and on the same sheet, so you can see, just like you were having a problem, Paul. You know, it's hard sometimes to look at it and understand what they're asking for, especially when they're demolishing something and replacing it with something new. So that space actually has something there, but it's going to be gone with something else in its place. It can be hard to figure that out without the visual aid.
I think some of this has to be considered on a case-by-case basis. We don't want this process to be more onerous for the applicant than it already is. I think the points are all well taken, but in some cases, in lieu of printed information or drawings, floor plans and what have you, we can simply ask the applicant, why are these windows so small? Well, because there's, kitchen counter in front, under those windows.
And they're usually forthcoming.
They're usually forthcoming.
Maybe not the floor plan so much as the elevations. I think the elevations would be helpful to have existing and
So
proposed.
we want more paper, not less paper.
Well, I mean, just, if you,
Okay.
like Rick said, have the existing on the top, proposed on the bottom, or vice versa, on the same page, so you can look at it on one page. You can see exactly what they're changing.
Okay, so I didn't know that comment on our commission meeting was going to engender that amount of discussion, but good. So our next meeting is March 27th, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
I lost.